Most of what gets called spiritual awakening isn't. It's just a costume change. And I don't say that to be cruel. I say it because I've worn that costume myself. And because the real thing, what's actually underneath all of it, is so much simpler and so much harder than anything the spiritual marketplace has ever sold you. Because before you can understand what awakening really is, you have to understand what it is you're waking up from. Most of us spend the first part of our lives living inside a self that was assembled by other people. Your name, your nationality, the God you were told to pray to, or told was a fairy tale. The class you were born into, which shaped not just what you had, but how you were allowed to think about yourself. Whether you were the clever one, or the difficult one, or the one who was never quite enough. All of it decided before you could speak, pressed into you through repetition, reward, or shame. You learned very early what got you love and what got you silence. And you became that because you had to, because that's what children do. They shape themselves around survival. And it works. For a while, it works. You build a life inside that identity. You achieve things with it. You suffer with it. You define yourself by it. And then one day, and for everyone it's a different day, a different crack, you look at it from outside for the first time, and you think, who built this? And more quietly, more uncomfortably, is any of this actually me? That question is the beginning. That's the first light, and it's terrifying because if the answer is no, if none of this is really you, then who are you? And here's what almost everybody does next. They take off the old costume and immediately put on a new one. Because the ego doesn't die just because you saw through it. It's too clever for that. It just rebrands. And suddenly, you're the awakened one. You've done the work. You know things. You can see the machinery behind the world that most people are sleepwalking through. And that knowing, that sense of being on the inside of something, it feels like freedom. But look at what actually happened. You left one tribe and joined another. You swapped one set of unquestioned beliefs for a different set of unquestioned beliefs. You traded the mainstream narrative for an alternative narrative. And you're still doing the same thing you always did, looking around at the people in your tribe for confirmation that you're seeing correctly. The face has changed. The tribe mentality didn't. And the cruelest part of the spiritual ego is that it uses the language of openness to stay closed. It talks about consciousness while being unconscious of itself. It preaches love while quietly sorting everyone into the awake and the asleep. You can feel it when it's operating. It's that slight elevation you feel around people who haven't been where you've been. That private certainty, the kind that's really just thinly veiled condescension. It's just ego wearing robes. And a lot of people stop here. They live here. They call it enlightenment. But the real journey starts when you're willing to let go of it. When you really look, when you sit with yourself in genuine stillness, what you find isn't a better version of your personality. You find something that was never born and can never be threatened. You find the witness, the thing that's been watching your whole life play out, the presence behind the eyes that never changed. even as everything around it changed. That is the soul. And the moment you genuinely contact that, not as a concept, but as a felt reality, everything shifts. Because you realize, I am not a human having a spiritual experience. I am a soul temporarily inhabiting a human animal. And then, and only then, do you look up, and you look at the person across from you, the difficult one, the one you've been judging, the one who hurt you, the stranger on the street, the politician you can't stand, and you see it, the same light, in there, behind their eyes too. They are a soul wearing a human animal, living the same confusion, running the same survival programs, trying to make it make sense, just like you. And in that moment, the hierarchy collapses. You're not ahead of them. You're not more awake. You're not further along. You're the same thing, moving through the same dream, wearing different suits. That's it. That's the whole game. First, find your soul, then realize everyone else has one too. Now comes the part that takes a lifetime to master, because knowing this, really knowing it, means you have to try to live from it, and that is harder than anything the spiritual marketplace has ever tried to sell you. The soul has three main qualities, three things it naturally is, and your job for the rest of your life is to learn to embody them. The first quality is presence. And I want you to notice something right now as you're watching this. There's a part of your mind that's already somewhere else, planning something, replaying something, running a quiet background calculation about what comes next. It's not because you're distracted, it's because that's what the human animal does. It's a survival machine, and survival machines don't get to rest. They're always scanning, always projecting forward into a future that hasn't happened yet. Once I've got this, once I've finished that, once things settle down, then I can finally just be. And then you get there, and for about 5 minutes you're there, and then it moves forward again. The soul doesn't live like that. The soul is here, completely, quietly, undefendedly here. Not waiting for conditions to be right, not postponing itself until circumstances improve, just here, in this moment, which is, if you really look, the only moment that has ever actually existed. Presence isn't a technique, it's not a breathing exercise or a meditation position. Those things can point towards it, but they're not it. Presence is what's left when you stop running the program. When the seeking settles, just for a moment, and you notice what's already here underneath all the noise. It's closer than your next thought, it always has been. The practice is simply this: noticing when you've left, and coming back, again and again and again. Washing the dishes and realizing you haven't been washing the dishes. You've been somewhere in next Tuesday. And coming back to the water, the warmth, the weight of the cup in your hand. That's the whole practice, coming back. The gap between knowing that and doing that gap is a lifetime of work. The second quality is truth. Tell the truth, always. I know that sounds simple, but it isn't. Not because people are deliberately dishonest, most aren't, but because we've spent our whole lives learning to perform, to adjust, to read the room and become whatever versions of ourselves is most acceptable in it. to soften the edge of what we actually think, to say we're fine when we're really not, to agree when we don't agree, to shrink or expand depending on who's watching. We do it automatically, so we don't even notice we're doing it anymore. Truth doesn't mean being cruel. It doesn't mean using honesty as a weapon, swinging it at people under the pretense of being real. That's just ego disguised as honesty. It means something quieter and more demanding than that. It means noticing the moment you're about to say what's expected instead of what's true, and choosing the harder thing. In small moments, ordinary moments, the conversation where you nod along with something you don't believe, or the version of yourself you keep presenting because the real one feels like too much of a risk. Those small untruths accumulate. Each one is a tiny step away from yourself, and after enough of them, you can barely hear what you actually think anymore. The soul doesn't perform. It doesn't negotiate with what's real. It just sees clearly and speaks from that clarity, without cruelty, without calculation, and without one eye on how it's landing. Learning to do that in the small moments, the awkward moments, in the moments where truth costs you something, that is the practice. And the third, the deepest, is unconditional love. Not the romantic kind, not the easy kind reserved for people who are already easy to love, but everyone. And I want to stay with that for a moment because I know what the mind does with it. It immediately finds the hard case, the person who hurt you, the one who lied, the one whose politics makes your blood boil, the one who you can't be in a room with. And it says, "You want me to love that?" Yes, but not in the way you think, because here's the distinction that changes everything. You're not being asked to love the animal, you're being asked to love the light inside the animal. Every person you've ever met is doing exactly what you're doing before you woke up. Running survival programs, reacting from old wounds, trying to get their needs met with the tools they have. Their animal is frightened, their animal is defended. Their animal will sometimes be unkind, dishonest, selfish, small. You can see all of that clearly. You can name it, you can choose not to be close to it. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional access. You can love the soul in someone without letting their damage you. Those two things are not in conflict. In fact, the clearest acts of love sometimes look like distance, like a boundary held with warmth rather than anger, like walking away without hatred. The practice is this: when someone irritates you, or disappoints you, cuts you off in traffic or lets you down, before the judgment hardens into a verdict, pause, just for a moment, and look for the frightened animal underneath the behavior. You don't have to excuse it, you don't have to stay, you just have to remember what's really there. That pause, that half a second of recognition, that's the practice. That's what unconditional love actually looks like from the inside. Not a grand gesture, not a sainthood, just a moment of seeing clearly before the animal in you responds to the animal in them. And some days you'll manage it, and some days you won't. And that's fine, because this isn't about arriving, it's about the direction you keep choosing. Now here's the part the Love and Light Brigade will never sell you. There is no arrival, no final state, and no morning you wake up and the work is done. No mountain with your name on it where people come and sit at your feet. And if you meet someone who tells you they've transcended the journey, look at them closely, because that's the spiritual ego in its final form, the one that's convinced even the person wearing it. The only final destination in this life is death. Everything between now and then is the journey. The clarity and the confusion, the days you embody your soul and the days you completely forget it exists, the love you managed and the judgment you didn't catch in time. All of it is the path. None of it is a detour. The person who's never asked a spiritual question, the one who hurt you, the one who's been sitting in silence on a mountain for 40 years, or the one who cut you off in traffic 10 minutes ago. Same road, same direction, same destination. The spiritual path isn't a different road. It's just choosing to walk on the one you're already on, consciously, with eyes open, awake to who you truly are. And where you are, right now, exactly as you are, is exactly where the path is. So wherever you are on this journey, you're not lost. Keep going. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, keep dreaming.